Good morning. On behalf of the Atlantic Council, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event, the Nordic-Baltic region cooperation in NATO's Northeast. I'm just delighted to welcome our audience in our Atlantic Council headquarters. It's a steamy day in Washington, and we have delegations from the 32 member states of NATO all in town this week. We have an all-star cast of speakers that I'll turn to in a second, and a terrific event ahead. And I also want to welcome our virtual audience this afternoon in Europe and all around the world. I'm Fred Kemp. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council, and tomorrow marks the start. Actually, it starts today, but the official start is also tomorrow, so the 9th through the 11th of the summit. World leaders are convening in the midst of major geopolitical inflection point, and the alliance has work to do. The summit takes place against a backdrop of mounting uncertainty, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, and we saw yesterday's strike on the Children's Hospital, a big barrage of more than 40 missiles across Ukraine, more than 37 dead, more than 170 wounded. And I don't think it's accidental that Putin chose yesterday on the eve of the summit to do this. So we have Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, and emboldened China, the biggest defense industry buildup in peacetime history, all present acute challenges to global stability. And we're at the half point of the year when half of the world's population are taking part in major elections representing nearly 2/3 of global GDP. And now more than ever before, it's imperative for the U.S. and NATO allies to stand together to reaffirm their collective support for a secure, peaceful, and democratic global community. And with Sweden and Finland joining NATO recently, the Nordic-Baltic region, which has always played such a crucial role, will be even more so. The center of gravity of the transatlantic security is shifting to the north and the east of NATO. As frontline states confronting the reality of Russian aggression so close to home, the Nordic-Baltic states have an invaluable perspective to share. And while they have a well-established tradition of regional cooperation, this is the first NATO summit where all are participating as full members. So to discuss these issues, we're joined by leading officials from across Nordic-Baltic states, and thanks to the ambassadors who are here in the room with us as well. So the officials we have from Nordic-Baltic states: Sweden, Latvia, Norway, Iceland, Lithuania, Denmark, Estonia, and Finland. It has never been more timely to convene this group for this discussion, and it's an honor to welcome you all to the Atlantic Council. I just think whatever you say here, the symbolic power of you being here just means a lot to us, so thank you so much. And I think all of your governments know that the Atlantic Council is here to support the Nordic-Baltic efforts in the alliance. In conversation, they will be with our distinguished in conversation with our distinguished Nordic-Baltic speakers, we're pleased to be joined by Mary Louise Kelly from National Public Radio and NPR. Mary Louise, it's great to have you here. And she will moderate. We see convenings such as this one as integral to promoting our shared values and shaping the global future together. What comes out in the agenda is really important, what's really rich, but the community that's built around this robust, not just transatlantic, but global community, and creating the habits, the muscle movements of working together, I think is just as crucial. We aim to help this along by galvanizing U.S. leadership and engagement in the world in partnership with allies and like-minded partners to develop solutions to global challenges. As part of this mission, the Scowcroft Center's Transatlantic Security Initiative shapes and influences a debate on the greatest security challenges facing the North Atlantic Alliance and its key partners. The Transatlantic Security Initiative is co-hosting this event with Atlantic Council's Europe Center, which seeks to promote transatlantic leadership and strong Europe in turbulent times. I'm also looking out, I see Anna Wieslander here as well, who is our force for good in the Baltic Nordic area in our Stockholm office. I see board member Mike Anderson, our International Advisory Board member, both from Saab. Mikkel Johansson, I want to greet the Saab contingent here, which has been part of the Atlantic Council now for many, many years, including behind our very popular Commander series with 4-star leaders of the Alliance. So thank you again for joining us. And with that, I'll turn over to Mary Louise.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Atlantic Council for hosting us. Thank you all for being here this morning. I am Mary Louise Kelly, and I host All Things Considered, which is NPR's flagship afternoon evening news program. I'm looking at this and thinking I have moderated a lot of events in this town, but 8 senior diplomats on stage at once is a first. It occurs to me that as we are discussing burden sharing and allocation of resources within the alliance, I would like to recognize that we are exceptionally well-resourced on foreign ministers this morning. So welcome to you all. Let me make a brief introduction. I want to introduce everybody by name from the Nordic-Baltic 8 and NATO, and then we're going to dive in. We'll start on the top row. Gabrielas Landsbergis, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Lithuania. Welcome. Lars Luka Rasmussen, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Denmark, welcome to you. From Finland, Political State Secretary Pasi Rajala, welcome. From Estonia, Undersecretary for Political Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kielike Celesti Elling, welcome. Tobias Billström, welcome. From Sweden, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Minister for Foreign Affairs Latvia, Baiba Braja, welcome. Espen Barth Eide, Minister for Foreign Affairs from Norway, welcome, and have patience with me. Thordis Kolbrun Rekfjord Gylfadottir. How did I do?
Very well.
Say it for me, so
the names.
okay. Welcome from Iceland to all of you. Among the things you have in common is you all represent countries on the front lines against Vladimir Putin's aggressive ambitions in Ukraine, and we're going to talk about this morning how you all are adapting to this dangerous moment. What does the addition of Sweden and Finland do to your ranks in terms of reshaping the geopolitical balance? What does the future of the alliance look like? What does the future of the US relationship with this alliance look like? We are on the record this morning. I'm going to throw a quick opening question to each of you. If I could ask you to keep it to a few sentences, I will interrupt because I want to make sure that we get to a bigger, broader conversation. And I'll start with you from Sweden because you're the rookie here. Welcome. As you all know, Sweden joined NATO 4 months ago in March. Congratulations. Do you feel safer?
Indeed we do. And let me say very briefly that Sweden joining NATO was, of course, coming home. This was the end of a process which started in 1994 when we became members of the Partnership for Peace, and when we now became fully fledged members on the 7th of March. That was indeed a crowning achievement. So yes, we do feel safer in this environment, and we also feel that we are bringing a lot of capabilities and contributions to the whole concept of defense and deterrence within the alliance.
Secretary Rajala, same question to you as the slightly senior member here, having joined 15 months ago. I mean, same question, do you feel safer? And you've, of course, dealt with Putin threatening to deploy troops at your border.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. For us, we have always been accustomed to taking care of our security on our own for 100 years. So this is a big mind shift for us Finns to understand that we're no longer alone, that we're this wonderful group of allies and the United States and other allies. So I think that's the biggest change for us. We felt secure before, but now we're even more secure.
Okay, and I will look forward to following up on what you're telling me. Minister Espen Barth Eide, I'm coming to you next because Norway, of course, is on the opposite end of this timeline, one of the 3 original member states of NATO on this stage. And it occurs to me that since you helped to found NATO, the task has remained somewhat constant in the big picture sense, securing peace, deterring threats, cementing a collective deterrence, but that the tools with which you are doing it are very different. We're still seeing fighting in trenches in Ukraine right now. But increasingly, you're dealing with threats coming in cyberspace. You're dealing with misinformation, disinformation, information warfare. Do you have the resources you need?
we have many of them, but we need more. And I want to say, may also say that I also feel safer because Finland and Sweden joined NATO, because we are neighbors of both. And the fact that the entire Nordic-Baltic area is now connected as a congruent NATO territory from the Barents Sea to the Baltic Sea matters to all of us. So I think we all feel safer, and we are all, we are almost as happy as Sweden are about the fact that they're finally in, because this really matters to this region. And then to your question, yes and no. In a sense, we're back to basics. This is exactly what NATO was set up to, was to take care of the security of the transatlantic area against potential threat and real threat from other states. And we're back to that. In the meantime, we're doing a lot of other things, going to faraway places to fight terrorism and so on. But in a sense, it's the old mission coming back with a vengeance. And if we didn't have NATO, we would have to invent it immediately, because it has really proved to be a very useful alliance. But then, of course, come the added challenges of critical infrastructure, of cyberspace, of outer space. So there's a lot of new dimensions to it. But the core purpose is that if you prepare defense together and you tell each other and everybody else who might be interested that we are ready to defend each other, that is the best deterrence in the world. That works for us. And it's also a great thing for America, because although you're on the other side of a big ocean, it's always much better for the US to have an orderly Europe, because every time Europe was breaking down in flames, America had to intervene anyway after reflecting on it on a couple of years. So why not just prevent that, but making sure that it doesn't happen in the first place?
Thank you. Minister Rasmussen, how about the view from Denmark? How has your security landscape changed, either with the accession of new members quite recently, but over the 75 years? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I just want to echo what Espen said. We also feel more secure. For the first time in 500 years, the Nordic countries now come together once again in the same defense union. We had a union, Kalmar Union, until 501 years ago. And then we have been divided. Some of us has been founding member of NATO. Some of us have been in the European Union. We have had strong cooperation in the Nordic Council. And now we all belong to the same institutional framework. And that is extremely good, because we have to deal with different challenges. As Espen said, we are back to a new normal, but still a normal, where we have to uphold territorial defense and deterrence. But we also have to deal with all the new challenges from hybrid war, etc. And of course, NATO is the most operational platform, but it also comes with initiatives we need to take within the European Union and in a stronger Nordic cooperation and Nordic-Baltic cooperation. So combining efforts is good for our security. And then, of course, we have all stepped up. We have increased our defense budget by 160% during the last decade. And we are all top contributors to Ukraine. So I think we are stronger and we are more secure, even though we are living in uncertain times.
Uncertain times is a good way of putting it. Secretary, the view from Estonia. I want to shift us to Baltic defense priorities, where you are seeing an increase in Russian provocations, including a recent proposal to change maritime borders in the Baltic Sea. How is Estonia responding? How should NATO respond?
Yeah, thank you. Well, Estonia has now been a member of NATO for 20 years. Indeed, we also feel safer, and yet the environment around us has, of course, changed and become much more serious. So I think defense priority-wise, they haven't changed for us. I think what the war in Ukraine or against Ukraine has done has really highlighted the need to step up. We don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. We need to build up NATO's defense posture. And this, I think, has come to the fore very clearly with the horrible war that's going on
What
in
does that
Ukraine.
mean when you say build up the defense posture?
Well, I think on the first thing is that we need to start spending more on defense. I mean, I think all of our countries do, but there's clearly a need to step up. So Estonia, for example, this year is spending 3.4% of GDP on defense. The other thing is, of course, the defense plans. You know, we have a new family of defense plans at NATO, and now we need to make sure that they're actually implementable, that we have the forces and the capabilities to actually implement these these plans. So there's a lot to do, I think. I think a lot has already been done, and I'm sure that that's the message that's going to come out from the summit starting this evening. But still, there's a lot more to do.
Yeah, thank you. Minister Landsbergis, it's good to see you. I was thinking I last interviewed you back in 2021, and at the time the subject was a migrant crisis at your border, where you were telling me that refugees were coming in and were being weaponized. So I'm glad that that particular moment has passed. But I want to ask you a similar question in terms of how the security landscape looks for you in this moment in 2024.
Well, thank you so much. Indeed, well, first of all, it has passed, but mostly passed just for us.
Yeah.
In other words, it has spread. Now Poland, just recently Finland, before that Latvia, and so basically the whole region has faced exactly the same instrument, where people are being brought for wherever, faraway country and being pushed to a European NATO border, expecting that it would affect us politically or economically or in either way. So now we've shown that it's possible. In Lithuania and other countries are doing exactly the same thing. It's possible to show resilience at a time of pressure. Go in line with our international commitments, but then again to show that it won't affect us in the way that adversary expects us. And we're seeing exactly the same method applied on many other occasions. And you mentioned trying to redraw the borders and so many other things that we still call hybrid. But the question is whether we're still able to do that, because in many cases when it's sabotage, you should be able to call it something different. Now the whole security landscape is being shaped in Kharkiv. Lithuanian security landscape is being shaped in Kharkiv. The way that the war will go on, the way that Ukrainians will be able to resist and push back on Russians, it will affect directly on my country's security.
Yeah.
If they won't be able, that means that my country's security, the security of my people, will be worse. And that's why, and then colleagues mentioned that already, you would see us not just talking, but if you take the 10 first countries who assist Ukraine the most, it will be these countries. If you take the countries who spend the most on their own security, it would be these countries. So this tells you the whole story. This tells you how we see the security. This tells you how we see the security landscape. It's about Ukraine, and Ukraine is about us.
We're going to get to Ukraine more deeply in just a minute. Minister Braja, I'll change gears a little bit and ask what you will have a lot of Americans paying attention to this summit this week. What message do you want your U.S. counterparts to hear and take away from this summit?
I think it's important for the Americans to hear that they have friends in the world and they have reliable allies in the world. I think that is something that is very important to internalize for any leading American politician on any side of the aisle. And there is no more reliable allies than the NATO allies. And the Nordic-Baltic region, indeed, when you look at the polling and the attitudes, is the most transatlanticist, but also the one that spends on defense, industry. And actually, I think defense industry is a further integration base, not only among ourselves, but also with the US, and seeing how we can tie us closer, having everyone in NATO. I think the second point is clearly the Americans need to hear from us all that the problem is not Ukraine, the problem is Russia. The policy of Russia is war. It's not going to go away for the next few years. So the actions that we take in that regard, the instruments of power that are aligned on our side, whether that's political, economic, military, diplomatic, informational, and so on and so forth, actually, we need the US to be with us on that. So Russia is a problem. It's not going to go away. The threat of Russia will be with us for a while. And there is no other region that is more acutely aware of that than the Nordic-Baltic region. It's not a front line. We are all NATO members, so it's not a front line. It's an external border of EU and NATO that we are managing. But the action actually matters. We all, as far as Nordic Baltics are concerned, are doing that.
Yeah.
But we need the US to be with us on that.
Thank you. Foreign Minister, the view from Iceland, and same question to you. What do you want Americans to know, to hear from you, and take away?
Well, first of all, I agree with Baiba that the U.S. needs to know that it has true friends and allies, and the U.S. needs to know that they need true friends and allies. For me, the regional cooperation between the Nordic and the Baltics has probably never been as tight as it is now. And one of the things that I have mentioned quite often, and all of my friends here have heard me say, is that we gain a lot by listening to the countries that are closest to Russia, because they have, unfortunately, they have the experience and they have the knowledge, and they have it in their fingers. And I think the US also need to recognize that paying the insurance is always a smarter business than not doing so, and then end up in a situation that is so much more dramatic on all fronts. More costly, both in currency and in lives, and in just the rule-based order. Because, like Gabrielius mentioned, I mean, this truly is not only about Ukraine. It really matters how things will go there, the effect on the international system and the rule-based order. And there, the interest of the United States really lies, and they truly have to know that and be, because of course it's, you know, for the smallest states, you could probably say that it's more important for us that the multilateral system and the international system really thrives and holds. But it is also the fact for the bigger states, and especially leaders of the free world that want to continue to have a free world.
Thank you. Let me open this up to a wider conversation. Some of these questions I'm going to throw out there. Please start speaking or signal me if you want to jump in, or just jump in and I'll try to keep things moving. But I know there'll be questions that some of you are burning to talk about, and others where you want to hear what's on your counterparts' minds. But that tees me up to, I think, follow up on a couple of these last comments. Minister Braja, you discussed the need for the U.S. to know that it has reliable allies in Europe, in NATO. Is it reciprocal? Do you find in the U.S. a reliable ally right now?
Yes, we do. Of course we do. And it hasn't actually mattered which administration has been in charge. We have seen it throughout, and not only since the Russian first aggression against Ukraine in 2014, but also before. So we assess threats together, we adjust our action, we have the situational awareness that provides the ability to respond as needed, whether that was Afghanistan, where we were all together, whether it's Iraq and the training mission there and supporting the coalition against ISIS, or it's now with regard to strengthening NATO's own deterrence and defense and the new military strategy. The work that our military colleagues are doing is incredible. And, you know, it relates to all of us, Iceland too, without having defense force. But actually, the sort of the new NATO military strategy, the investment in situational awareness, the rapid response, the ability to share intelligence and adjust the action. US is leading it all, the same as with regard to support to Ukraine. And now the decisions that we will take in the summit with regard to the new mission for Ukraine, the coordination assistance that NATO will provide, the ability to ensure the defense funding and the pledge to continue that funding for Ukraine, the political support, the interoperability, it's all, US has played a very important role. So yes, US indeed understands that all.
Understood, but I want to push you all on this, each of you, because I understand that you want to project unity and the importance of the alliance while you're here. But within a family, you have difficult conversations. And it is no secret in this room, there was some laughter when I posed the question, because as you know, we have political uncertainty and instability here. Our presidential race is in greater flux than anyone might have imagined for July of 2024. To what extent does political uncertainty domestically in the biggest, richest member of NATO influence what the alliance can do in terms of ambitions, in terms of capabilities? Please. And then you. Yep.
Well, thank you. First of all, I think that we all have full agreement, I think, here that the transatlantic link and the US participation in NATO is, of course, indispensable. That goes without saying. But on top of that, I think that we all take our own responsibility very seriously. Regardless of the outcome of US elections, we need to step up. We need to do it. We need to increase our defense spending budgets. We not only have to reach the 2% target, we have to regard it as a floor and not as a ceiling, which I think we are also partly in agreement with. And I think that when all is said and done, this is something which we also have to display. We have to talk about it with our American partners, and we have to talk with the American public about it. And we have to do an outreach to come across with that message that we are doing our part of the job, and we are telling others that they should do the same. And also, just on a side note, there is a tendency sometimes in European media to be very focused on the election outcome for the White House. But we all know that the Congress and the Senate has a lot to say when it comes to foreign and security policy. And I personally, during the NATO process, experienced this with my dealings with congressmen and senators. The great confidence and the full confidence, I should say, in NATO as a concept, regardless of whether you're talking to people from one side of the aisle or the others. Republicans and Democrats were just as assured about NATO being a cornerstone of US foreign security policy. And a president has a lot of power in the US, but you are not a Chinese or a Russian president. You have to think about what the Congress thinks about this. Thank you.
Although Congress, of course, has just held up Ukraine aid for many months to the detriment of Ukraine's ability to fight.
Well, again, that's democracy, of course, and we can argue about this, and we argued, and we all had contacts and dealings with the US saying what we thought about this. So I'm not going to play down it, but that's democracy as well. Thank you.
Please.
So, the United States is the quintessential ally. It's a sine qua non. Without the US, you don't really have NATO. And it has been as your question was, do we see the US as a reliable ally today? As you informed, definitely. And it's been for 75 years. We think it will continue. But I would echo my colleagues in saying that we also understand, as Europeans and Nordic-Baltics, that we also have responsibility for investing in maintaining the understanding, because if you live in Europe, it's hard not to notice what's happening in Russia. It might not be that obvious in the Midwest or in the deep south of America. We understand that, with respect. So we cannot leave that only to our American friends. We should also be part of that conversation, that this is a good investment for you. It's an insurance policy, as Tordis said. And that historically, I think it is well demonstrated through practice that having an orderly Europe is good for America. And even if your main concern is about the rise of China, which is almost a bipartisan issue in the US, very understandable for good reason. Particularly, actually, if you want to spend more energy on Asia, you need to make sure that NATO is in order, because then you have, in a sense, your own backyard, your closest friends, those allies in the world that are closer to you culturally, economically, politically, are safe, is good also for America. But we should not just believe that there were generations of American leaders on both sides of the aisle who just knew that and kept it alive. So what we are saying is that we also want to come here and speak to people and remind people and share our perspective, and also make sure that we also care about America's security concern, including the rise of China, and maybe also a kind to remember that the sole time where the Article 5 was invoked was after an attack on America, not on a European country. That was surprising for the founding fathers, but it works both ways.
And please know that Americans remember that with gratitude. Here and then here. Please.
Just to pick up on Minister Espen's point, the United States is obviously the leader of the alliance. It's the greatest military power in the world. But even the United States needs its allies, like we pointed out. I mean, in this world of new emerging technologies, this group in particular has a lot to contribute to that global competition on winning the AI competition with China and all that. We have other capabilities that we can bring to the table, including the Arctic. The Arctic is increasingly important, and we have specific capabilities there, Norway, Sweden, Finland in particular, Iceland, obviously. So, I mean, it's a two-way street. I mean, NATO is not charity, it's a two-way street, and I personally believe that the United States increasingly needs its allies, and I think the realization on the Hill is expanding on that.
Thank you.
I would somehow like to shift the focus, which is usually trying to get us to commenting on the democratic processes on this or that country. A couple of weeks ago, I had to comment on the upcoming elections in France and how that will affect the future of Europe or future of NATO and all that. Democracies are messy. That's a fact. In some cases they're messier. In some cases you would like them to be more, more predictable. But they're just that, and it's the way we work. And there's very little that we, from the Nordic and Baltic region, from Europe, from wherever, we can do to influence and to comment on it. Therefore, I think that we need to focus on different things, on different point. The point now is, how do we see, if we, like Frederick mentioned during his intervention, if Russia's war against Ukraine is an inflection point, basically a point in history that will be remembered, that will reverberate through decades and maybe even longer, are we up to the task in this current point and meeting this inflection point as we should? Are we not? And we don't need elections. We don't need to talk about the upcoming elections, because the question is right now. And it has been last year in Vilnius, it has been a year before in Madrid, and I don't think that we have a right answer. And therefore, focusing just on election doesn't answer the question, how do we meet this inflection point? And if we look back into history, First World War, Second World War, it took a while for allies to come together. It took a while. Now, when you read any history book about the First or Second World War, you don't read about the messiness of elections and democratic processes. You read about how did we see the war, did we come forward, and did we provide the right answer, or did we not? And at this point, I think that the main thing is that, unfortunately, we're not exactly there where we should be in order to meet the threat that Russians and its allies pose to an alliance.
Well, this is the question, because it almost feels, you made the analogy to World War I, World War II, where it started messy and fractured and came together. And of course, we tell it in our history books as a great alliance that prevailed. With Ukraine, does it seem almost as though we're going in the opposite direction? Right after Russia invaded, there was great unity within NATO, within democracies that are not in NATO, in terms of supporting Ukraine against a Russian invasion. And now, if you look at wobbliness among Americans and our investment in this conflict, that's just a fact. If you look at public opinion polling, it is not top of the agenda here anymore, in terms of resources or anything else.
Well, Putin has not yet done everything to unite us enough in order to bring the answer that is needed. That's the way I see it, and it's very unfortunate, and that most likely that the future will be that.
Things get worse before they get better?
Yes, exactly. That Putin will force us to do more. Because now what we see, in our minds, we expect either Russians to stop, somehow to stop, to be weaker than we expect them, or Ukrainians to be stronger. We don't expect us to step up somehow and to change the outcome of the war. And we might be wrong in this. And we still, I think that the last chapter of this historic inflection point is not yet written.
Please.
Well, I'm not going to argue with Gabrielius. On the contrary, I think you put the case very well. But what I would like to say, speaking about the American audience, is that we have to make the case for the connection between the security in the EuroAtlantic area and the Indo-Pacific area. As Espen said, it stands to reason that China is perceived as a greater threat of Russia and China. But what we have to make absolutely clear is the fact that if Russia succeeds in Ukraine, then the whistle will blow for China in the relation to Taiwan and the entire Indo-Pacific area. And it is this that makes this so crucial, so important, because this is about world order. This is about the world order that came about after the Second World War with multilateral institutions. One of the things which makes this group so, I wouldn't say just dynamic, but also so good to work within is that we are almost on an equal footing. We represent small and medium-sized countries, all of us. And we know that without the multilateral systems that we have, we are not going to make it. And we have to make the case for this connection between Russia's aggression against Ukraine and what this means on the global level. And fancy, you very often meet people in the Indo-Pacific areas, representatives of smaller states there as well, like the Philippines, like the Vietnam, etc., who are extremely worried about China and who view the conflict in Ukraine exactly the way that we do, and who have voted in the UN General Assembly along those lines. We have to present again to the American people and to the American political leadership this connection in clearer terms than what we have been able to do. Otherwise, I'm with you completely on how you presented things.
Secretary.
Yes, just to pick up on the global point made by Minister Billström, I think it's very important that all of our countries, we do indeed represent the same sort of values, and we've been trying to spread that message globally as well. I know the ministers had a recent visit, or this year, to India, for example, together, and I think that's a really strong message. But we have our work cut out for ourselves, because we have a huge sort of a community, global community, where I think there are many countries that haven't actually decided whose side they're on. And I think we still have a lot of explaining to do about the war in Ukraine, what it represents, because I totally agree, it's a question of international world order. You know, do we want to maintain the world order as it is, or do we want to have autocracies decide on the future? So if we don't discredit the sort of aggression as a statecraft, we're in big trouble, I think, all in all. So we have a lot to do, and I think as a group we also have a lot of credibility, actually, when we speak to countries across the world. And it would be good if we had US kind of leadership coming on board also. You know, it's one thing to keep US engagement in European issues, that's very important, but I can say from our perspective in Estonia, we want US leadership. You know, and I think that's something that we'll be looking for. So regardless of who wins the elections, I think that's something that we're always eager to see, is seeing the US leading.
Yeah. Foreign Minister.
Just to, because what was mentioned about big regions in the world that haven't really decided, it's because they don't know which side will win. And they are not in a position to bet on it. And then if that side which they bet on will lose, then they're in trouble. So it's just their interest. And even though we can have our opinion whether it's the right strategy, it's a strategy that makes complete sense. So again, in connection with the interest of the United States, do we want to see, I mean, it's a bet between the free world and autocratic world. Wow. And even though, you know, we can all here say, and I can definitely say for Iceland, Iceland does not stand a chance in Putin's world. And we desperately need the system that we have now. That's how we thrive. That's how, you know, we can pursue quality of life and all of that. But the same goes eventually in the end for the United States. Because if the bigger regions that will not, you know, bet on it, they will just wait and see. Well, if the wrong side wins, it's a very big deal for the United States. Yeah. So it's obvious that it's a smarter strategy and a better business in a broader sense to do this together and aligned in unity in messy democracies where all the problems are on the table while the other ones can hide it, and do what's needed for us to thrive, to set the record straight and say we're still gonna, you know, believe in the free world, and we're going to act in accordance.
Yeah. Minister Brozier, I see your hand, and I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I do want to follow up on this, because what I'm hearing from all of you is there's a need to safeguard assistance to Ukraine. Ukraine needs to win. So I ask the next question with genuine curiosity. Americans are very curious how the rest of the world is tracking this. Is there a need to Trump-proof NATO? He has suggested, as you know, that he's not going to prioritize assistance to Ukraine. He has suggested he might be thinking about pulling out of the alliance. Trump-proof Ukraine. How are y'all thinking about that?
I'm a very practical person, so I think we have the three very clear pillars of action and lines of effort. One is continuing to strengthen our own deterrence and defense, so the allies' security, further integration of our military, of operations, big exercises, command control, and as I said, industry, I think is something that we need to advance. And that's both with the US, but also within the European industry strategy, with a very clear understanding that the outcome has to be filling those capability gaps that Secure has indicated in his assessments that we have, and not just, having industry producing sales for Asia or Africa and earning money, but really filling those capability gaps. So one, strengthening our own deterrence defense. Second, very clearly, is the support to Ukraine, which is not only by providing what Ukraine needs, but also providing that interoperability with NATO, also ensuring that the strong points of Ukrainian defense are advanced. So reducing the number of casualties, the human casualties, increasing technological advantage, not being scared that Ukraine will misuse it. That hasn't happened. They've been very disciplined, and they will continue to be very disciplined. Training, command control, and so on and so forth, but also being very targeted on degrading Russian military capability, and that's within our means to do that. It's within our means to do that by not only sanctions together with the US, with OFACs that we do, but also much more targeted work within Europe and the world. Disabling China, because China currently is the main enabler of Russian technology. And let's put it that way, without China, Russia cannot win this war. So again, there's a very precise action that is needed. And the third pillar is working with partners around the globe. It's not only Indo-Pacific, it's also partners in Europe, partners in the South, partners in MENA. Right. With each and every one, we have a relationship, and we need to maintain that. But also clearly for us as Europeans, I think we need to be clear that we have vested interests in America. So it's not only Washington, D.C.
Correct.
I mean, it's the rest of the U.S., all the states. We have to be out there as Europeans, and not only Nordic-Baltics. We have to be out there by all the engagement means. Again, private sector, universities, everything that we have.
Minister Rasmussen.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's possible to Trump-proof anything. I had the honor in my former capacity as Prime Minister to participate in one of those summits years ago with President Trump, where he, read out the total list of allies and their spending on defense. And he wasn't really satisfied for very good reasons, because we made a promise in Wales many years ago to Obama, and we didn't deliver on that.
Talking about the 2% target?
The 2% targets. But things have changed now, and 2/3 of the allies now meet these criteria. And as Tobias said, it's not the ceiling. It's the most needed point of departure. I think we should, instead of discussing whether we can Trump-proof things, we should discuss whether we could future-proof things, because at least it is my opinion that whoever is the president in the White House, I mean, we have to be realistic about the new geopolitical situation. Yeah. The demographic changes in the US, for many good reasons, America, as my colleague said, are looking towards China, etc. So we can't just talk about what we need from US, we have to deliver as well. And that's why I guess all of us have signed the Defense Cooperation Agreement with the US, allowing them to have permanent presence in our countries. And that's why and how we have stepped up in our own defense capabilities, and we should do more. I mean, it can't just be a request towards US. We have to understand that it is in our own best interest as Europe to spend more efforts defending ourselves. And that will give us an upper hand towards anyone in the White House in the future.
I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Should Ukraine's application to join the alliance be advanced? Should Ukraine's application to join the alliance be advanced? Yeah? Should it be advanced this week?
It could have been advanced.
It could be.
Yeah. It should be advanced every day, but it's not about wording. It's about, practical steps. And we need to push our Ukrainian friends to reforming their country, and that's why this is not only a NATO responsibility, it's also a big task within the European Union to engage with our Ukrainian friends and to engage them in the European family. And of course, this is an irreversible process, but the starting point is, as Gabriela said, that we need to deliver more. And that's why and I'm proud to say that we are number 4 contributor to Ukraine, not per capita or anything like that, but in total numbers. US, Poland, UK, Denmark. And this group of countries, we are among per capita the strongest supporters. And we need to do more. That's the best thing we could do instead of discussing, wording in a conclusion which will be published a few days from now.
Every single hand on this stage went up when I asked if Ukraine's application should be advanced to join the alliance. What happens the next time Russia attacks and it triggers Article 5, collective defense? And that's the central conundrum, as you all know better than I. Please.
Look, well, one way that NATO works is, being in NATO is a deterrent itself, right? It answers the question about the next day. This was your initial question to Tobias, to our Finnish colleague. Are you safer? You're not asking, what will happen if Sweden is attacked and, triggers Article 5 and Lithuania has to go protect Sweden? Is this worthwhile? You ask whether they feel safer. That's the question that you formulate. So unless you expect that if somebody is in NATO, then it immediately attacks, Russia is going to attack that country, well, then it should apply to all of us.
But let me flip that question on you. Hold on, just if I flip
Sure.
that question on you, do you feel safer if Ukraine is in the alliance and the next time Russia bombs a children's hospital, you have an obligation?
The main question is, what do you do if one day Ukraine settles, hopefully within its internationally recognized borders, and then Russia attacks again? Because Russia is rebuilding right now. And that is the main question in every Ukrainian's mind today, and in most of our countries as well. What will happen the next day? And therefore I would, the core of the answer has to be, how do we deal with aggressive Russia, which has not lost and is ready to attack again? That is the main question. And when, again, look into history, when the Allies, with UN mandate, decided that South Korea, the Korea that was, free, from in 1953, has to be defended, they got assurances, real guarantees, real contingent that was in that country working as a deterrent so that Seoul and the people of Korea are not attacked again. And that's how you answer this sort of question. And leaving Ukraine outside any security arrangement in Europe means that you are inviting attack.
I saw Norway and then Iceland.
Well, as Gabrielus said, when the day Ukraine is in, an attack on Ukraine will be exactly as if it was an attack on Latvia or Poland or Sweden or Norway, because then it's one for all. The point, of course, is we're not importing an ongoing war into the NATO alliance. But Ukraine's security matters very much to us, so we want to make sure that they prevail. And actually, yes, we want to support Ukraine in winning, but the main point is Russia not winning. It's basically that Russia must not prevail, because that would mean that the most fundamental norm of international relations, namely that wars of aggression are prohibited and you should not invade and occupy other countries, is acceptable, and we cannot accept that. So that is why this is so important. And a part of the outcome has to be NATO membership, but the actual membership will come when the current war is over, and we want to help that war to end in a for Ukraine good way. And then we talk about security guarantees afterwards. And it has to be underlined that Article 5 works. No NATO member has been attacked by another state for 75 years. And after the guarantees to South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, none of these countries have actually been invaded by other states. So the guarantee empirically has worked. That connecting that to the strongest military force in the world actually has a deterrent effect. So we need to be able to expand that. But let me also say that our European experience is that one of the strongest foreign policy tools of NATO in history is to issue the promise of future membership. It's not only the day you join, it's the whole process, and you all know this, the process towards that joining, all the reforms, all the translations, some of them difficult. It's true for the EU, true for NATO, but what you end up with are countries that are fully compatible with all NATO standards, both military and civilian and political and across the board, and that makes us all stronger. So to maintain, we want to get Ukraine in, but there are also some expectations to the Ukrainian side that goes on top of our support to their actually prevailing in the war.
Minister.
Ukraine has already decided where they belong. As a sovereign and independent country, they decided that they want to be a part of the European family within the European Union, and they want to be a part of NATO. We say we have an open door policy. We say that Ukraine has to win and Russia has to lose. We say that gray zones are bad, and we want less of gray zones, not more of gray zones. We see as a fact that the NATO umbrella has, we've seen peace within NATO for 75 years. So that obviously works. So it makes sense for them to want to join. We say open door policy. We've already decided that the future of Ukraine is in NATO. So for me, we've already answered the question, and now we have to make practical steps to show that it's credible, that the way to membership is getting shorter, not longer. And what are they fighting for, if not for sustainable peace within their sovereign and independent country? They are literally fighting with their lives to get that future. And we say it's an open door policy. We say your fight is our fight. Well then, of course we raise our hands. It's about, to deliver what we've already said.
Yeah.
And they show every day that they're ready to do.
And to make sure I understand the timeline, what I'm hearing is the war must end, then Ukraine can be granted membership in NATO. Is that accurate? Everybody on board with that? Minister Brejcha.
Can I just address the previous points? Don't forget that Ukraine is a really capable fighting force. They will make NATO more secure, safer, all of us stronger, and very experienced fighting force in all ways. Also a strong economy, a growing economy, a strong energy sector that Russia is currently debilitating. So it has all the features, all the pillars that we need in NATO. So it's not only about us defending Ukraine. Ukraine will make NATO stronger. So on top of what Tordis was saying and Espen, it's very clear. As for the end of war and Ukrainian victory, it will be defined by Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's not for us to define when the war ends. Ukraine relies on us. We need to keep up support and clearly showing to Putin that he will not win by hoping that we get tired or that we run out of money. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's about our security and our future.
In the 2 minutes we have left, lightning round, just a sentence or two from each of you. What would count as a successful summit this week here in Washington? As you're on your planes, getting ready to head back, what will distinguish whether this worked or not?
Just 30 more seconds and I'm done. I think the main part, deterrence and defense package, is basically done, so we will confirm it. It's not much in public domain of it, but it's strong. It's really strong, the implementation of new military strategy. Support to Ukraine will be there, a good summit with Zelensky, and a good summit with leaders from Indo-Pacific and friends around the world.
Okay, why don't we just work our way down as we go? Minister Ida. Successful summit.
A strong demonstration of unity, strong demonstration of a will to have a long-term commitment to Ukraine, a strong recognition that there are issues beyond Ukraine that we need to start reflecting on already now. How do we develop a sort of the post-Ukraine war order? And that the transatlantic cooperation is good for you, whether you're on this side or on the other side of the Atlantic.
Please.
I echo my two friends, and I know that I will echo the rest, so I'll give them time.
Okay, thank you. I just, on the previous point, if I may, just on the gray zones, I think that's really important. We won't have peace and security in Europe until we get rid of gray zones. And I think we can go back to 2008, 2014. Putin learned from those situations. And so I think we need to be really mindful. But I think this summit will be a success if we get a sort of a longer term package for supporting Ukraine. I think when the war started 2.5 years ago, we did a lot of important decisions. They were ad hoc, and now I think it's really, we're all realizing that this is going to be with us for a while. We have full-scale war in Europe, and we need to lock in sort of long-term support, but also deal with our own defense posture. I think that will be really important from our perspective.
Thank you. Secretary.
Just overall, a strong message that we understand how serious the situation in the world is on both sides of the Atlantic, and we make the according commitment.
Well, it's repetitive. A strong signal of unity, and I think we managed to send that already by echoing each other.
Well, echoing is the key word here, but I would expect one thing. I would expect a clear answer that Putin's latest attacks in Kiev, to children's hospitals and other objects in Ukraine will not go with impunity, that they will not be left unpunished.
Thank you. You get the last word.
Yeah, thank you. And as chair of the MB8 for this year 24, when we celebrate the 75th anniversary of NATO, I think it's a good sign that this coincides. I think you have said things very well to all my colleagues. The only thing I think maybe I would like to add is that we also want to send this clear message about transatlantic cooperation. This is why we are here in the DC, to show also that we care about what America and the American people think, and we want you to know how important NATO and NATO as an organization is to the security and the safety for all of us, not just in the relationship between Europe and the US, but for the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you. We're at time. So it's my pleasure on behalf of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative and the Europe Center to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. This has been a pleasure. Thank you to all of you. I'm wishing everyone in this room a productive and a successful summit. See you soon. Thank you.